So what do you think? Do you think scholarships increase or decrease motivation? Some of the athletes, the student athletes, probably have a pretty good idea about that. We'd like to think that scholarships increase motivation. But in fact, some of the surveys and studies done show exactly the opposite. So it depends on quite a lot of things. And a lot of it has to do with the coach. If the coach is more controlling, or if the coach is more informational or supportive, so gives a reward to support a performance or an attitude or behavior to keep that going, or simply to control the way that the athlete performs, behaves, feels, etc. So we don't necessarily get an automatic increase of motivation just because somebody has a scholarship. And I became aware as an instructor how challenging athletes' path really can be. They have to maintain all of their training and certainly all the commitments to the team, and including games. But their GPAs have to remain pretty high, and they are expected to be a pretty outstanding student in order to maintain their scholarship. And if not, then they can lose it. And so they really are on blast. Depends on the individual whether winning or losing is going to affect motivation. The outcome can affect it depending on the person. They have a lot of informational value. So if a person views winning or losing as more information as to how they might do better next time, what they did great this time, sometimes people don't even think about the win or the loss as much as they do feel and evaluate, rather, their own level of performance. The most successful fighters I've ever worked with were more on the lines of informational. If they did a great job and maybe there was a split decision, or the decision didn't go their way, or even if they just lost the fight through a knockout, they could walk away from that with their head held high. Now, everybody wants to win, certainly, but the most successful mental aspect in fighters I have worked with is just that. They really do look at it as how they did and what they can learn from it. And guys are more prone to be influenced by winning or losing than women after a win. Females don't seem to be as affected according to the literature. And if you do have a really hard time with loss, don't feel too bad about it. That's very human. But if you'd like to alter that, then learning to shift your focus to being more about your self-mastery. And this is a very valuable tool for people who are in rehab, because they're not going to be able to do maybe even what they used to do. There's a video on Rocket Science. It was made in the very first semester, and a student interviewed her aunt who had MS. And she asked her aunt how she felt about working out, and her aunt said, "I don't do it because I know I'm not going to be able to do what I used to do." And it broke my heart. And that may be the case for a lot of people who have suffered some type of disability or some type of illness or an accident, that their lack of motivation is so low, and it remains low because they are holding themselves to some standard that isn't realistic. So it's something to watch out for. If you have a client or a patient who you perceive to have a really low motivation, it could just be that you need to help them learn how to have a self-mastery focus and look at things incrementally. Use that Will Smith example of, you don't go out and build a wall. You go out and you lay one brick as perfectly as a brick can be laid. And when that brick is done, you get another brick and you put it in as best as is possible at that point in time, and then you eventually have a wall. Sometimes that just takes a little bit of training.